Hello and welcome to the third episode of our van build series.
In this one, we're going to be covering what is arguably one of the most important parts of any camper van, the bed.
So when it comes to bed design, there are loads of different options out there, and ultimately you just need to choose what works best for you.
A popular option is a fixed bed, which provides space for storage underneath. These are great because it means you don't have to set up and pack down your bed each day, but they do take up a lot of space, so they're better suited to larger vans.
Another popular choice is the bed and table combo. These are usually made with seating on either side of the van, and then there's a space in the middle for the table. The table can then be dropped down to act as the sort of middle section of the bed. These give you a nice amount of space, which acts as both a social area and your sleeping area. But again, they do take up the whole width of the van, so are best suited for medium to larger vehicles.
The option that we think is best suited to a smaller van like ours is the slide-out bed. These are a really popular style of bed that you see in a lot of conversions because they're super versatile and fairly easy to build.
This is why we're going for a slide-out design in our van, because they're simple to adapt and personalise to your space. We're going to be building ours in sections so that it works as both a corner sofa as well as a single and double bed.
So to get started, you're going to need some sort of base for your bed. Now you could build this out as a simple storage unit, but we wanted a drawer system that would pull out the back of the van that we could use as a stand-up outdoor kitchen.
Our original plan was to make a slide-out tray on some strong runners that we could build all of our kitchen storage onto. However, we found this slider by Vanvolt, which happened to be pretty much the exact size we were after, as well as come with some super heavy-duty runners. It also gets bolted to the floor, so it can act as a safe storage box when we want to leave expensive equipment like camera gear or tools in the van.
For us, this seemed like a no-brainer because we'd have the drawer system all ready to go, as well as a really solid base to work from. We actually made a video for Vanvolt showing you how to install one of these sliders, so if that's the option you want to go for in your van, we'll pop a link to that video in the description below. But if you don't decide to go down that route, then essentially you can just build yourself some sort of structure that's the size of a single bed, and then follow along these steps to turn that into a slide-out double bed.
The slider itself is slightly shorter than the length of the entire bed, so the space just behind it is perfect to house all of our electrics that we want for the van. We boxed all of this in with plywood, but don't worry, we'll show you how we kept this accessible a bit later on.
So whether you're working with a Vanvolt slider like us, or you've built your own bed structure, then your next job is to get this clad. We measured up the length of the Vanvolt plus the electrics area behind, and then we transferred this over to some plywood.
A track saw came in super handy for this whole section of the build, as it meant that all of our cuts would be dead straight to keep everything nice and square without the need for a table saw. There are a couple of air vents in the Vanvolt, so we cut some slots around these before fixing the ply in place, using a combination of screws and adhesive. In our case, this was Sikaflex.
Using the same technique that we showed you in our last video, we made a cardboard template for the top of the bed, and this helped us to work out the awkward shapes that come from the curved wall on the side of the van. Once we were happy, we then transferred this over to our plywood and cut the shape out with a jigsaw.
Before we fixed the top in place, we wanted to cut an opening in that plywood so that we could still access all of our electrics. We measured and then cut this out really carefully so that we could still use that section that we removed as the lid. If you don't get this exactly right, it's not a problem, you can just cut the insert out of a separate piece of plywood.
To support that lid and make sure it didn't fall through, we added a plywood lip to the underside of the hole. To secure this in place, we're using our favourite method of using super glue and wood glue together. The super glue dries really quickly and acts as a clamp, whilst the wood glue has time to dry and add the strength. These Rockler bandy clamps also come in super handy for this type of application.
had this little unsupported section just by the side door that wasn't being utilised. Seeing as we didn't want a single inch of this van to go to waste, we boxed this area in with some nice 15mm birch ply and then secured it again using Sikaflex and screws. This left us with a nifty little shoe storage area.
On the topic of unused space, there was also this little area on the other side of the wheel well that we couldn't bring ourselves to not find a use for. So just like we did before, we cut a hole with the cutout piece then becoming the lid, and then this area could be used to hide away smaller items such as wallets and keys.
But this is our little secret, okay? Don't go and post it online for any old person to see. We then cut and attached a chunky batten that was nice and straight to the far side of the bed. This would act as a stopping block for that sliding mechanism to butt up against. It's important this is nice and square to the opposite edge of the bed to make sure that whole sliding mechanism works properly.
To save us having to use a skinny piece of tongue and groove cladding to fill the gap between the bed and the wall, we just cut a small piece of pine and used that instead.
Next was to move on to the sliding mechanism. So at this point you probably think it's just easier to show you the final piece and then explain how it works before we show you how to build it. Just a warning, this may seem like a lot of info in one go, but trust me, it will make things a lot clearer in the long run. As you can see, the bed is made up from a series of slats. This is how it looks when it's in sofa or single bed mode. You want to make sure there's a slight gap in between each of these so there's not too much of a friction build up when you're sliding them in and out. It can then open up to form a double bed. All of these slats are fixed in place. They are screwed into a support piece on one side and into the front edge of the bed on the other. All of these slats are the ones that move. On one side, these are screwed into a sliding batten that is fixed in place underneath. You need to make sure that the sliding cross piece is a few mil thinner than the gap so that it moves back and forth nice and freely. There is also a slight overhang on these slats so that they rest on the fixed support piece when it is returned to single bed mode.
The other side of these are screwed into the front sliding piece, which is on legs. This is what you use to pull the bed out. So essentially you have two moving parts to screw the sliding slats into, and two fixed parts to screw the static slats into as well. We're putting two screws at each fixing location. The one thing to remember is on both ends of the sliding slats, you'll want to have a small spacer between your slat and the cross piece that will move back and forward. These will make sure it still moves nice and freely. For this, we just placed a washer between the two screws, which was about 1 mil thick, which gave plenty of clearance. Whew, I think that covers it.
First, we needed to make sure the sliding cross piece was thin enough to move nice and freely. As you can see here, when the slat was placed on top, it was higher than our stopping block, so we had to reduce the thickness slightly. So we took it over to our thicknesser to knock it down by a few mil.
We then gave the front edge a slight round over using our trim router so that the sliding pieces don't catch when they're moving back and forth. It was then time to cut all of our bed slats, and for this we used our miter saw with a stop block setup so that we can nice and easily cut every single one to the exact same size.
We gave each of these slats a quick sand as well as a round over on one end to match that round over that we did on the support piece earlier on. We also added a strip to the other side of the bed which our fixed slats would screw into. This is split into two sections, but we'll show you why after we've finished all of this sliding malarkey.
Then it was time for assembly. We cut a couple of pine strips to act as spacers to put between our slats as we installed them so they all came out nice and even. was then just a case of screwing it all together using the layout that we explained earlier on. As you may have noticed by now, we are suckers for evenly placed screws, so we knocked up a quick drilling jig to use on all of our slats.
Now we know what you're thinking. Oh, you went to all that effort to make that sneaky hidey hole and now you've just gone and covered it up with one of those bed slats. But fear not, of course these genius brothers have a perfect plan for that. And by that we mean we completely overlooked it and had to come up with a bodge job fix that meant we could still use it.
But bodge job fix or not, it worked an absolute treat. We swapped the screws for dowels so that we could lift that slat up at any point to access the hole.
And boom! That, my friends, makes our sneaky hidey hole even sneakier. Now no one will ever know.
Right, now we're going to work on the other end of the bed, and don't worry, no diagrams needed for this section. This is done very much with the same method as before, but instead of those fixed slats being screwed to the support piece, they're hinged off the batten at the back.
This means that the whole section can be lifted and we can still access those electrics underneath. You should need to make sure that you make a separate front leg piece for that section.
The last thing to do is to box in those sliding legs, and this will not only add a load of rigidity, it'll also make the whole thing look a little bit neater. We use some more plywood for this, being sure to cut some handles in so that each section can be slid out nice and easily.
So there you have it, a fully functional single bed, double bed, corner sofa, outdoor kitchen area, electrics box and safety storage box. Not bad, eh? What more could you possibly want?
Now we just need to add a couple of mattresses. These will act as the seat and backrest when in sofa mode, or as the two mattresses when pulled out in double bed mode. But we'll sort these out at the end of the build and we'll show you that in the final wrap-up video.
Thanks so much for watching the video.
In the next episode we're going to be covering the storage areas and show you how to make a fold-away dining table.
Of course, with plenty of little sneaky hidden areas.
See you on the next one.